Hi, I'm Rob and welcome to L-Space Archives. Now, some of you may be saying, "Hey Rob, I thought you were in Pittsburgh attending Pulp Fest." Well, no. Obviously, I'm here at home in my library. So if any of you have been seeing someone who looks like me wandering around at Pulp Fest, then you're almost certainly dealing with some sort of invasion of the body snatcher scenario. But we're not here today to talk about some possible infestation of alien pod people. No, we're here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Starlog Magazine. In 1976, with Star Wars still a year away, publisher Kerry O'Quinn and editor Norman Jacobs launched Starlog. Their original plan was to have the magazine dedicated solely to Star Trek, but licensing complications prevented it from being an official Star Trek publication. So, they broadened the concept into a magazine covering all of science fiction, dedicated to celebrating the people, stories, films, television shows that inspired generations of fans. What began as a modest publication quickly became one of the most influential science fiction magazines ever published. For decades, Starlog offered exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes features, convention coverage, and a window into the worlds of both classic and emerging science fiction. Back before the days of the internet, this was where a lot of us science fiction fans got our news about upcoming films, TV shows, book releases, and so much more. This August marks the 50th anniversary of the magazine's debut issue. So there's no better time to return to where it all began by flipping through the very first issue of Starlog, exploring its articles, and getting a glimpse into the fandom of the mid-1970s. So grab yourself a can of Rondo soda and a marathon candy bar as we head back to the 70s and turn the pages of Starlog number 1. First, let's take a look at this cover art painted by Jack Thurston. Love these early issues with these painted covers. They later switched to photo covers, but these are still my favorites. This came out just a month before my 12th birthday and cost $1.50. That left me with 50 cents from my $2 allowance. Just enough for the vending machine to get a pack of Marlboro Reds. The 70s were a different time. Inside the front cover, we get one of the pre-production drawings for the original King Kong. Won't spend much time on the table of contents since we'll be going through this whole thing anyway. We start with a mail-in contest to win a free subscription. There's a trivia question. On the back cover of this issue, Lindsay Wagner is accompanied by what famous actor, and what was the name of that episode of Bionic Woman? Then we have a welcome to Starlog letter from the editor. Dear reader, you are holding the first issue of a new quarterly magazine devoted to the field of science fiction in films and television, the realm that combines science, adventure, romance, and philosophy. At its best, science fiction in the visual media creates worlds apart from our own in which we can lose ourselves for a time while dwelling upon truths about the human condition that can be isolated by imagination and presented dramatically. Good science fiction films have been around almost as long as movies have. Consider Metropolis, Things to Come, King Kong, The Day the Earth Stood Still, War of the Worlds, Forbidden Planet, and many others that make all the grade Z horror flicks look as bad as they are. And since television's golden age, we have had both good series, Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, for example, and bad ones. But only in recent years, perhaps dating from the landmark 2001 A Space Odyssey, has SF Films gained any widespread measure of respectability. And what 2001 did for films, Star Trek did for television. We have chosen to introduce Starlog to the reading public with a spectacular special section on Star Trek, the most artistically successful series with continuing characters ever produced for television. Star Trek consistently dealt with serious issues, ethics, politics, sex, technology, war, prejudice, metaphysics, within the framework of heroism and romance, while maintaining a sense of expectation, a sense that mankind's destiny is noble and that there is a perfectly good chance of our realizing that potential. The very format of Star Trek was, by deliberate intention, inspiring. Today, 7 years after Star Trek's final episode was aired, the show's reruns are enjoying a fantastic popularity. I personally know actors, computer technicians, children, college students, people from every walk of life who try never to miss a telecast, even of an episode they've seen half a dozen times. There's even one CBS producer I know who would rather hop aboard the Enterprise than watch her own CBS News program. And I can't tell you myself how many times I've seen, say, City on the Edge of Forever, or The Doomsday Machine, or a piece of the action. In addition to presenting the abundant material on Star Trek, this issue will fill you in on the legal and artistic hassles surrounding a new production of King Kong. It will take you behind the scenes of our newest successful SF series, The Bionic Woman. It will explain the unusual measures being taken to improve Space 1999. It will introduce you to David Bowie's new film. It will show you how to make a killer worm. Starlog will, if you're half the science fiction enthusiast we think you are, give you worlds to think about and to look forward to. Join us quarterly as we explore both new and classic visions of the future that come to life in films and on television. Welcome to Starlog. David Houston, Editor-in-Chief. Yes, Starlog was originally going to be published quarterly, but the overwhelming success of this first issue led them to ramp it up to about every 6 weeks. The next section is log entries, giving us the latest news. There's an upcoming new film based on the Walter Tevis novel, The Hustler, called The Man Who Fell to Earth. Ooh, it's starring David Bowie. Its pre-release showings have been gathering rave reviews. Also, American International has some new films on the horizon. Coming soon, a film adaptation of Edgar Rice Burroughs' At the Earth's Core, starring Doug McClure, Peter Cushing, and Carolyn Monroe. A sequel to Michael Crichton's Westworld called Future World, starring Peter Fonda, Blythe Danner, and Return of Yul Brynner. And a film adaptation of H.G. Wells' The Food of the Gods. It's said to be based on only a portion of the book, but it is unknown at this time which portion that is. Yeah, that would be the title and the skeletal remains of the concept. Meanwhile, MGM has completed filming a movie based on the novel Logan's Run by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. The cast includes Michael York, Ginny Agater, Farrah Fawcett Majors, and Peter Ustinov. In other news, a science fiction exposition called SF Expo 76 will be held in New York City. Guests will include the top names in today's SF literature, including Isaac Asimov, Ben Bova, Len Carter, Hal Clement, L. Sprague de Camp, Gordon Dixon, Edmund Hamilton, Barry Malzberg, Frederick Pohl, Mac Reynolds, Norman Spinrad, Roger Selazny, and many, many more. There will also be collector's items for sale, including original cover art, some dating back to the pulps. God, that would have been an amazing experience. Also, production has started for a new movie called Meteor. And the first annual Star Trek Exposition of Washington, D.C. has been planned for July 1976 at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Meanwhile, Paramount and Universal are teaming up to produce a remake of George Powell's classic When Worlds Collide. Steven Spielberg will direct. Well, that didn't happen. Also, Wonder Woman Lives. Although ABC did not include Wonder Woman in its fall lineup, 2 additional episodes were made and scheduled for the spring. And then there's been some confusion on 2 Space 1999 vinyl records. They both have strikingly similar covers, but one is the music from the show, and the other is a dramatization by the actors made for children. And finally, the 3rd annual presentation of awards from the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films went to Rollerball, Doc Savage, and Young Frankenstein as the best films in their respective genres. Moving on, there's an article on the Bionic Woman, creating a cyborg for the 70s. This is about the writer Kenneth Johnson, who created the character of Jamie Summers, first when writing for the $6 Million Man and then for the Bionic Woman. Next, Space 1999, Radical Changes for the Second Season. This article is about how even though the first season has been a hit, there are a lot of fans complaining about the writing and lack of fleshed out characters. So they brought on Fred Freiberger as their new story editor to make significant changes to its second season, including bringing on 2 new characters played by Tony Anholt and Catherine Schell. I know a lot of fans are split on whether they prefer Season 1 or Season 2. As a kid, I personally loved all of it. I mean, there were spaceships, a moon base, and aliens. What more could little Robbie Joe want? Then, Battle of the Titans. 2 new Kongs challenged the King. This is about the legal battle between Universal and Paramount, each claiming to have the remake rights to King Kong. Unfortunately, Universal, which looked like it would have had the superior version, only had a verbal agreement with RKO, whereas Paramount had it in writing. Universal, at the time of this article, put its production on hold, and as we all know, it never came to fruition. Unlike Dino De Laurentiis' Paramount remake, Universal was planning on using actual stop-motion animation by Jim Danforth and has hired Fay Ray for a cameo, and was looking at Columbo's Peter Falk to play Carl Denham, Kong's showman captor. Also, they had approached actress Susan Blakely for the role of Ann Darrow. Next up, Squirm, importing giant worms for maximum slither. A new movie is headed to theaters, Squirm. This was an interesting article that not only gave the premise, a storm downs power lines and amps up giant carnivorous sandworms, but also had some interesting behind-the-scenes stories. The movie was filmed in Georgia, and they had to import over 250,000 live sandworms. The worms were kept at Georgia's Oceanic Institute, and in exchange, the scientists were given permission to study them. One of their discoveries was that the sandworms destroyed sludge and pollution in the Savannah River. The research project was set to continue after the movie company left. Also, local Boy Scouts were used by the production company as worm wranglers to handle the critters during the final sequence of the film. Then, Star Trek, Past, Present, and Future. This is just an overview of its beginning and the troubles they had with the network execs making ridiculous and sometimes contradictory demands, and then, of course, its ultimate cancellation. It also discusses a potential future Star Trek movie. And then the special collectors section. With some great shots from the show highlighting various episodes. Assignment Earth was meant as a backdoor pilot, but no networks were interested. Next is a brief article by Isaac Asimov about the various Star Trek conventions he's attended and how people of the time had the wrong impression about Trekkies. And William Shatner, Shakespeare to the Stars. Just a quick bio of Shatner leading up to his role as Kirk. It talks about his initial roles on stage and his reluctance to go to Hollywood. Then a similar bio on Leonard Nimoy, his other roles leading up to Star Trek, taking odd jobs to support himself and his family, and his initial doubts about the role of Spock. He didn't think audiences would be interested in a character that showed no emotions. And then the Star Trek episode guide. I always got excited when an issue of Starlog would have one of these. This was our pre-internet Wikipedia IMDb page. It gives the episode titles, air dates, cast lists, synopses, the writers, and there were some prominent writers working on this show. Richard Matheson, Robert Bloch, D.C. Fontana, Jerry Soule, Theodore Sturgeon, Harlan Ellison, Jerome Bixby, Max Ehrlich, Norman Spinrad, David Gerald, Gene Kuhn, and many, many more. And finally, star teasers, puzzles and games. There's anagrams, supply the caption, and matchup, puzzle, and word search. And then the answers. Then on the inside back cover, there's an article about the death of composer Bernard Herrmann and some of the films he scored, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Taxi Driver, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Citizen Kane, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Things to Come, Psycho, North by Northwest, Vertigo, Jason and the Argonauts, Mysterious Island, and the list just goes on and on. And there's that back cover again in case you want to try to win that free subscription. And that's it for issue number 1 of Starlog. I'll do more of these flip-throughs as each issue hits its 50th anniversary. Issue 2 didn't come out until November, but I have several of the Starlog photo guidebooks that I'll be showing in between. So, thanks for joining me in this little trip down memory lane, and I will see you next time. Oh, and if you're currently at Pulp Fest, don't forget to check under your hotel bed for giant seed pods. This is the real Rob saying